12 years, 65 cities, and the entire Japanese military versus a bunch of random farmers. Total War Shogun 2, Fall of the Samurai, set during the 1860s civil war between the Japanese shogunate and the Emperor of Japan, where we are going to be conquering the entire country, not with samurai, not with technology, but with only the worst units in the game. Levies. And not only that, but we're doing it on the hardest campaign setting, a complete domination victory, meaning we have to conquer every single city, region, and province on the whole map within a time limit. So first, the rules. I can only use levy spearmen and levy militia. That means no samurai, no cavalry, and no land artillery. So although I can't field Gatling guns, I will be fighting them poorly. The only exceptions to using levies are our generals and our navies. Fall of the Samurai has some of the coolest naval combat in any Total War game, plus a couple of navy-specific features that we'll get to later. And of course, our final rule. The sponsor of this video, Enlisted. Enlist your friends, enlist your parents, enlist your children. Enlisted maximizes this lovely thing called casualties by combining PvP with PvE, where players lead their own squads straight into machine gun fire, getting bombed, run over, or my personal favorite, straight up freezing to death in Soviet Russia. Personally, I absolutely love flying a plane straight into the ground. With over 100 weapons, tanks, and aircraft, there's no shortage of creative ways to blow someone up. Given the game takes place during World War II, play as the Kuber communists, foot fetish fascists, VTuber imperialists, or those people with nuclear bombs. You can play for free on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. Plus, use my link for free stuff. So play Enlisted, or I will draft you. Okay, that was probably the least unethical part of this video, because welcome to Japan. The faction we're using is the Saga clan, but not for their bonuses. Instead, it's because we start in the bottom left of the map, near a very specific province we need to capture in order to make levies only actually work. But first, some nice lore that I'm going to skip. As the Saga clan, we start with cannon, samurai, and matchlocks, which I disbanded. From this point forward, our armies will only be levy spearmen and levy militia. Both have the armor of, well, someone not wearing armor, will run away immediately and have absolutely no redeemable skills to speak of whatsoever. But they are cheap and don't require any buildings to recruit, meaning we're quite literally walking into the countryside, giving people guns, and calling it Texas. In the bottom right is a season and year timer, where we start in 1864. The problem is, the game ends in 1876. So not only are we using the worst units, but now we have a time limit, and Shogun 2 armies are very slow. The Saga clan does at least start with a foreign veteran, because we've sided with the British. I mean, the Emperor. That means we're hostile to factions supporting the Shogunate and friendly with factions supporting the Emperor, or at least in theory. Our first turns are just recruiting levy militia, who I will be referring to as Guy with Gun. I also embedded the foreign advisor for stat bonuses to our units, adding that good old British discipline. Our army and faction is led by our daimyo. John Smith. A few turns later, and we moved our armies into the sea. Navies are required to ferry units, but if a navy sinks, the entire army instantly dies. Landing our army, then sieging the city, we can also use our ships on the campaign to just blow up the city. And that naval supremacy doesn't go away. So when the defending army attempted to break the siege, we get naval bombardments as an invalid ability. The bombardment scales based on how many ships and how many cannons you have near the army. So the bigger the navy, the larger the bombardment. As much as my army is made up of these goobers, these dummies, and these silly billies, let's just bomb everything. Still, the enemy line infantry have better morale, firing skill, melee stats, stamina, armor, speed, and range, but they are also dead. Gunners in Shogun 2 have a few important properties. First, generally the only soldiers that can shoot are the ones in front, meaning you want to stretch out your lines to get as many units firing as possible. The second property is even more crucial. Getting shot will kill you. Regardless of health, wooden armor, or number of straw hats, you die. Every time. What good is training when you're surrounded, outnumbered, and fighting a general who truly does not value human life? Winning the battle let us occupy the island, eliminating our first opposing faction and leveling up our daimyo. In terms of skills, our goal is to get provision, giving us more naval bombardments in battle. The ammo increase doesn't really matter, because let's face it, nobody's gonna live that long. Our foreign veteran also leveled up, who can give our army bonuses to accuracy and morale, which was extremely helpful to put down this rebellion. Hordes of poor farmers meet hordes of poor farmers. So now that we have a basic grasp on the game and its mechanics, our goal of conquering all of Japan, and the 12-year time constraint we have, let's look at what's actually happening on the map. On the far right side of the island is where most of the shogunate factions are, and because we support the Imperial Emperor, all shogunate factions are essentially hostile. Case in point, I don't even know who these people are, and they're still declaring war on me. In the center is where most of the industry, railroads, and resource production is located, which is split between the Imperial and shogunate factions. On the far left is our side of Japan, which is an isolated island with mostly Imperial factions. As much as it might sound nice to have nearby allies, I still need to kill them. The faction immediately to the north starts in a military alliance with us, but their land happens to make a lot of money. So as their ally, I let them get invaded and die. I then moved my army into reinforcement range to entice them to siege it back, then moved out of reinforcement range, so they lost, sieging the city and having its new garrison attack out. Farmers with sticks fighting highly trained and disciplined samurai goes about as well as you'd expect, especially in a map so foggy that the only thing I know for sure is that I'm shooting someone. Eventually, their troops surrendered and started retreating. Let's see here, when was the 1929? We're in the clear. The next target was the island to our left, leading us to our first naval battle. Shogun 2 has some of my favorite naval battles of any Total War game, which isn't really a high bar considering the newer games just don't have them. Total War Troy, the face that launched 1,000 ships, allegedly. Because our vessels can only fire from the sides, the start of every battle is maneuvering to get a good angle on your opponents. The ships can fire on their own, or you can manually fire a broadside. Winning a naval battle can capture some of the opposing ships, assuming they still exist. It also opens up the path for our army, although interestingly any navy can transport any army. So witness my 2,500 levies on one boat. Landing on the island, their army sallied out, but setting up on the hill, we devastated their infantry, and more importantly, got a really good screenshot. Shogun 2 really surprised me with just how good it looks being from 2012. Then again, there's a lot of games which also came out around that era and still look pretty amazing. We ended the battle chasing down routing units and moved to siege the city. On the one hand, I could accept their offer of peace and save thousands of innocent lives. Welcome to the world of Shogun 2 siege battles. Now, I know this castle doesn't look that fortified, and these arrow towers aren't all that scary, so let's look at it from a different angle. Everyone in the garrison has a gun, I need to climb a literal mountain to get to them, and oh yeah, I have no melee units. My plan essentially consists of running at the wall, then screaming at my soldiers, "Oh." Apparently, my units are expert rock climbers. Most of them. Climbing isn't really the scary part. Getting to the top is what should worry you. But after 2 naval bombardments and overwhelming numbers, we successfully destroyed the enemy's will to live. So by the end of year 1, we'd seized both nearby islands, acquired my allies' land through honorable means, and had barely made a dent in conquering Japan. If we wanted to get on pace to conquer all 65 provinces, we'd need to secure a specific city in the south that of course was held by Satsuma. Now Satsuma is one of the strongest beginning factions. It has 2 starting provinces, an immediate vassal, and oh look, it took over most of the island. It's also an imperial faction, so they're supposed to be on my side. Supposed to.
Come, be seated. I will order tea, and we will have agreement before sunset.
Because their army is vastly larger and better, I defeated it by completely ignoring it and sailing up to their capital from behind. Sure, I'd have to fight the army later, but they were busy bulldozing my ally. Sniping their capital, it's important to never loot in Shogun 2. Our daimyo has this gross disease called honorable. If we do dishonorable things, literally everyone will declare war on me, which is fine. The problem is lower public order and dishonorable generals. Satsuma's capital is so important because it has a special building chain called a blacksmith, increasing unit armor and accuracy. There's also another building that increases accuracy further, combining for a whopping plus 35 accuracy to any unit recruited in the province. For reference, our levies have 10, so we could more than quadruple their accuracy, and with bonuses from our foreign veteran, we can make them on par with the highest tier elite infantry. They still suck in melee though. Another captured city later, and we came across Satsuma's 3rd city, but with an obstacle, the winter. I mentioned it briefly, but Shogun has a seasonal calendar. In the spring, people are happy, summer brings replenishment rate, fall lowers income, and winter kills everything. It makes all armies in enemy territory take sizable attrition each turn, meaning waiting out the siege wasn't possible. But what we did have, 2,000 extra bodies, and none of them ours. Choshu, the clan above Satsuma, was also in the area, giving us an entire stack of extra units. I'd even researched explosive shells, making our naval bombardments even scarier, and with our ally reinforcing from the... Leave me alone! In my defense, I did also hit some enemy units. Maybe. I even blew a hole in the defenses, so really they should be thanking me. Selflessly allowing my ally to attack first and engaging what I dubbed the Great Human Wave Offensive, they overwhelmed cavalry, somehow killed a general, and then ran straight into samurai and died. Their lack of a go-getter attitude would cost us in their lives, because my farmers are not very bright. But at least it was better than the AI who walked out of the city to fight us. Wait, is that a white flag they're waving? The ones who stayed in the city did not fare much better. Eventually winning the battle, we did take more casualties than I'd hoped, probably due to my ally not pulling his weight. But I'll forgive him. This time. Because of that, I'm sure the city will be overjoyed to hear I'm taking over. Now, you might have thought bombing our ally would be something they don't like, and the very next turn they sent me a message asking for a military alliance. I guess they liked my tactics. But Choshu aside, Satsuma still had one settlement left to the north, being defended by a fully kitted army, so we'd need to sit back and develop our provinces for the time being. We'd reached the end of year 2 in the campaign, and had made up some of the time we were behind on. Securing the blacksmith was absolutely essential, but our economy was somewhat lacking because I had the tough decision of either drafting more farmers or actually feeding people. Besides Satsuma, there is also another issue. Pirates, raiding trade routes with the Western powers and continuously bombing my ports, cities, and farms. Now, my navy is decent, but decent only earns a one-way ticket to the bottom of the sea, which is why I researched foreign affairs, unlocking the final boss of the game, white people. This lets us accept a military mission from one of the 3 Western powers, France, the USA, or Great Britain. France is out of the question because they don't support the Emperor. The USA technically works and even offered us a military mission first, but they focus on artillery, so I declined in favor of Great Britain. To ask the British for help, you've got to be pretty stupid or pretty desperate, and I am all 3. It isn't very important now, but remember it for later when this thing finishes building. For now though, our main concern was finishing off Satsuma, but as I passed the turn, I realized I'd made a grave mistake. I'd bombed them too much, if such a thing even exists, because Choshu was able to snipe the settlement from under. While the game considers Choshu a de facto ally because they also support the Emperor, I don't, due to extremely complicated socio-political reasons like I want all their shit. To prepare for the inevitable war I would cause, we cleaned up the naval pirates, improved our income, and allied Fukoma, a small clan bordering our cities. My wife even gave birth to a daughter, which is how I discovered I had a wife. My blacksmith had also been upgraded into a gunsmith, along with a new firing range, meaning we could now recruit levies with 45 accuracy instead of 10. I'd even recruited Geisha, who are quite possibly the most powerful agent in the game. Don't believe me? Watch as Choshu sends an elite assassin after one. Geisha are beefy, just like Choshu over here, fabricating a reason to declare war. Luckily, Fukoma joined me in the defense, but it didn't help our political situation a whole lot. We were about halfway through year 3 and at war with this clan, this one, that one, and all of those. Also that one. Even just booting Choshu off the island wouldn't be easy, although apparently my Geisha was able to walk in, wave her fan, and seduce their general. That Geishusi got him acting unwise. When I was finally able to attack the city, Fukoma had come to help. We had 4 armies, one of whom was the previous defending general, against a single garrisoned army, and were only barely favored. Fukoma's army was made up of samurai, horsemen, and somehow ninjas. Basically an army actually good at sieging, is what I thought. Ninjas are pretty great, until they get shot. My ally was able to reach and scale the wall, so his infantry were the perfect distraction for the enemy range units. My soldiers just hailed bullets into the garrison for about 20 minutes. We basically shoveled as many levies up the walls as was physically possible, and when my ammo was depleted, go get 'em, boys. One farmer with a gun outside your house is scary. 5,000 farmers with guns outside your house, and the South will rise again. By the end of the battle, our army had a tranquil 66% mortality rate. The city was completely leveled, and most of the casualties were not mine. In summary, success. But the other side of the island was far from ideal, with my ports being constantly sieged, then bombed, then sieged again. Tensions within our land were also not great. So it's probably time I introduce you to something I've been exploiting the entire game. It's called taxes. See, whoever made Shogun 2's public order system did not realize how insane it can get. If public order is negative for 2 consecutive turns, a rebellion spawns. But the unintended side effect of this is that there's no difference between -1 public order and -1 billion. So each turn, I can set my tax rate to break the backs of my citizens, causing negative public order in every province. The following turn, I just lower it back down, and everybody forgets, which I've been doing every other turn for the entire game. There's only two kinds of money in this world: money the government owns and money the government will own. With revenue earned from the Great Theft, I built a somewhat decent navy to try and save our ports. See, the enemy ships are built from this crazy material, wood. So when I shoot them with explosive shells, their entire navy surrendered, and I sank it. My clan development also reached max level, which basically means we've adopted Western weapons and traditions. The downside is a public order debuff, but as we've established before, public order is a game of rock, paper, scissors, where the winner is always military occupation. Speaking of which, we now had our first group of blacksmith buffed levies with improved armor and accuracy. The downside is that our blacksmith is on the bottom left of the island, meaning recruited units would need to traverse a huge distance to actually start fighting. Fortunately, it seemed that someone on the mainland had developed a solution. Railways are great, but they're also nowhere to be seen on our island, meaning we need to expand onto the mainland to get access. And what better way to actualize that than to eliminate Choshu? It had taken us 3 full years, but at last we controlled the entirety of our island. But to expand onto the mainland was an entirely different beast, requiring us to traverse a strait, necessitating naval supremacy to pass. On one side is our land, and on the other is 2 full stacks of Choshu. Although since my ally is the closest, they'll attack him first, and I'll be okay. Dear Japanese deities, I ask of you only one thing: to stop getting bombed. I swear my people are used to it by this point, which would be great. In 1945, beating Choshu's sieging army wasn't hard, especially since we had those blacksmith buffed levies. Even with trained line infantry, we still outclassed them, letting us cross the strait to fully eliminate Choshu. But of course, a new enemy, Tosa, with their clan-specific Red Bear infantry, and also a supporter of the Emperor, which stopped me from declaring war for about 5 seconds. I sent my Shinobue ahead to scope out their armies. Oh god, at least he could sabotage their units. The one thing that is nice about levies is how cheap our armies are. I have about 6 full stacks worth of levies garrisoned everywhere, a new 20 stack of buffed levies, multiple armies in the mainland, and still making more than 10k. But levies have a pretty big weakness: cannons. Tosa's armies were beginning to field parrot guns, the first actually decent cannons, and masses of infantry are not very helpful. We could still overwhelm most armies, but the longer the game goes, the higher tech units our enemies will field. So at the end of every battle, I need to explicitly hunt down routing cannon crews and obliterate all of them. My geisha can also slow down the advance of enemy armies by seducing their generals. I mean, the worst he could say is no. Regardless, things were going decently. We'd taken several of Tosa's cities, secured another blacksmith, and maxed out our clan fame. Wait, we maxed out our clan? Oh, that's not good. Welcome to the Realm Divide, a special event that triggers as soon as we occupy a certain number of cities. And when it hits the limit, total war. By taking enough provinces for the Emperor, he and every other Imperial faction have decided to throw in their support with us. So instead of being the Saga clan, we're now the Saga Imperial Vanguard, letting me ally every other Imperial faction regardless of grudges. So what's the downside of Realm Divide? Well, this would be it. Immediate war with every shogunate faction, led by their own vanguard, who is none other than...
Shame for this place!
If you thought it was bad before, now the real grind begins, to take everything else. So what better way is there to start the Realm Divide than by reforming our taxes to make them even higher? We'd need to take over the rest of the island, so money was a necessity. My rated trade routes, on the other hand, not so much. The Shogun had a significantly larger navy than us, bombing a ludicrous amount of port cities, causing blockades, and transporting armies, so it was imperative we stopped them. Which is why it's time I reveal my trap card. I summon the fucking Brits. Remember that British military mission? Well, this is what it gives us. A single warrior-class ironclad. With over 300 crew, 42 cannons, and near impenetrable hull, one does not fight this thing. They survive it, and even led by a Grand Admiral, Maurice. This single ship also costs more to upkeep than an entire army, probably because it is an entire army.
Sir, your general is in terrible danger.
Well, our navy cleaned up the coast, an ambush battle, which I've actually never seen before, so I decided to fight it manually. Turns out they had ninjas. Turns out ninjas throw bombs. Didn't know that. Sure, that's a lot of casualties, but it just doesn't matter. The amount of armies I could field was becoming ludicrous, using the rail lines to transport them instantly. And despite recruiting almost 20 levies every turn, my income was still going up. I mean, what could possibly counter a massive army of farmers? Another massive army of farmers. In a twist I'm still somewhat confused about, the AI began to ditch their shogunate infantry for their own stacks of levies. I know I've shown attacking in several sieges, but not really defending. And the AI in Shogun 2 is absolutely relentless. So in deploying my troops, I put some on every level of the fort. As soon as the enemy started to scale the walls, I pulled back further and further up the levels. But Jesus Christ, did I underestimate the AI. Gigantic wall you shouldn't climb? Here's 2,000 levies. Group of soldiers in a choke point, just cram everything in it. Even their general wasn't spared because I'm pretty sure he died slipping on the wall. The first level was overwhelmed immediately, and the final capture point was nearly overwhelmed with sheer numbers. We were barely able to hold on for a victory, and the AI threw nearly the entire army away in the process. Oh great, we beat that army, so why am I surprised they literally did it again next turn? As much as I was horrified at what they were doing, it was pretty impressive. Their tactic was actually really good, so what if I could do it but better? Which is why I'd been building a secret weapon, one we'd gotten from the second blacksmith we conquered. Meet the Horde. 4,000 levy spearmen juiced with extra armor, melee attack, and morale. And that's not including my other 4,000 stack. On the naval front, Maurice and the Ironclad were fighting multiple navies at once, and it wasn't even close. It was 1870, and we'd captured 39 out of 65 provinces for the Emperor, with the rest falling extremely quickly. But the real final challenge was the province of Musashi, with the castle of Edo, or in modern terms, Tokyo. I gathered my stacks of levies and prepared to move on the capital, requiring us to grind through an inexorable tide of shogunate infantry. The methods changed from a ridiculous amount of bombing to filtering a whole army of elite infantry over a bridge, and ended by pushing 4,000 spear levies through a wall of bullets. Despite my best efforts to spend money, we now had over 35,000 in income, with about 15 full armies worth of levies map wide. So bringing our daimyo from the north and more armies from the south, we'd arrived at Castle Edo. Just like how the game started 6 years ago, it was winter. And instead of being at our old capital, we were now at Japan's future capital. The enemy fielded a lineup of about 3,000 elite shogunate infantry. And our army, levies, 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 and levies. 14,748 of them. The shogunate had fought well, killing 2 levies for each infantry loss. But with near unlimited reinforcements, 4 naval bombardments, and our maxed out legendary daimyo, Edo had fallen. And about 20 turns later, so did the rest of Japan, with all 65 provinces captured for the Emperor, triggering the victory screen, where our Emperor looks onward, probably terrified that a giant army of farmers just took over the country, meaning we had, once and for all, conquered all of Japan for the Emperor. But 65 provinces isn't all of Japan, with the entire northern side still being not ours. 1 minute, please. Oh my god. Finally. The last province. I have grilled my way through the entirety of northern Japan, which is a nightmare to traverse, but this is the last settlement. My levies are so leveled up, they're up to 94 accuracy, and I have $1.4 million because I've just stopped spending money. It's done. It's over. Thank God. I didn't even lose a single unit for the final battle, as it should be. That's it. The last clan is gone. Of all the challenges I've done, this one might have taken the most creativity, and I'm pretty sure I haven't forgotten anything either. Oh shit. Also, be sure to check out Enlisted. It's free, and you can use the link in the description to sign up for free stuff below.